What if I told you that Xi Jinping is so terrified of his own government that he is using his Harvard-educated daughter to translate his private words to President Trump because he cannot trust a single diplomat in the entire Chinese Communist Party? That China only announced this historic summit 2 days in advance because they were scrambling behind the scenes in complete panic, and that Trump just walked into Beijing carrying more leverage than any American president has ever possessed in the history of U.S.-China relations. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Right now, something historic is unfolding in the capital of China. President Trump has landed in Beijing for the first time in nearly 9 years. And the signals surrounding this visit are unlike anything we have ever seen in modern diplomacy. This is not a routine summit. This is not a carefully choreographed diplomatic photo opportunity. This is a fundamental confrontation between the world's two superpowers. And everything about it suggests that China is negotiating from a position of weakness they have never experienced before. If you understand that American strength is the only thing that keeps the world order stable, and that President Trump is the only leader willing to use that strength, smash that like button right now. Every click helps spread the truth about what is really happening in Beijing. Because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why China is desperate, why Xi Jinping is isolated, and why this summit could reshape the entire global order for generations to come. Stay with me because this story involves panic, desperation, and leverage on a scale you have never seen. Now let me start with the reception Trump received, because it tells you everything about where China stands. When Air Force One touched down in Beijing, the Chinese rolled out the red carpet. President Trump was greeted by Vice President Han Zheng, a full military honor guard, a military band, and approximately 300 Chinese students waving both Chinese and American flags. But here is the phrase that matters. Beijing officially called this a state visit plus welcome. State visit plus. They invented a new category just for this occasion. They are signaling to the world that this is more important than any normal diplomatic visit. They are telling everyone that what happens over the next 36 hours will change everything. And they are right. This is the first visit by a sitting United States president to China in almost 9 years. The last time was Trump himself, back in November 2017 during his first term. Not Obama after that point, not Biden. Nobody set foot in Beijing for 9 years. 9 years of the world's two most powerful nations negotiating at arm's length. 9 years of tension building. 9 years of China expanding its influence while America watched. And now Trump walks back into the Middle Kingdom. But everything has changed since his last visit. This time, he holds all the leverage. This time, China needs him far more than he needs them. Now let me tell you about the delegation Trump brought, because nothing like this has ever happened before. Trump did not bring just diplomats and policy advisors. He brought an army of American economic power, the most powerful business delegation ever assembled in the history of American diplomacy. There is a photograph that captures the moment perfectly. Trump and Elon Musk sitting together on Air Force One, both of them smiling as they fly to Beijing. The partnership that helped reshape American politics is now reshaping American foreign policy. But Elon was just the beginning. Tim Cook of Apple was on that plane. Jensen Huang of NVIDIA was there. And here is an incredible detail about Jensen Huang. He literally flew to Alaska at the last minute to catch Air Force One after Trump personally called him Tuesday morning and told him he needed to be on this trip. The President of the United States personally called the CEO of NVIDIA and said, "Get on this plane." And Jensen Huang dropped everything and flew to Alaska to make it happen. That is the kind of loyalty and coordination we are seeing. That is American business and American government working together as a unified force. The list continues. Larry Fink of BlackRock, Steven Schwartzman of Blackstone, David Solomon of Goldman Sachs, Jane Fraser of Citigroup, Kelly Ortberg of Boeing, Larry Culp of GE Aerospace, Cristiano Amon of Qualcomm. 17 CEOs in total. 17 of the most powerful business leaders on the planet, representing trillions of dollars in market capitalization, representing America's dominance in technology, finance, aerospace, and manufacturing. This is not just a diplomatic summit. This is America's entire economic might walking into Beijing and delivering a message. We are open for business, but only on our terms. No president has ever assembled anything like this. No president has ever brought this concentration of economic firepower to a foreign negotiation. This is Trump showing China exactly what cooperation looks like and exactly what resistance will cost them. Now let me tell you about the strange signals, because something very unusual happened in the days before this summit. Normally a state visit of this magnitude is planned weeks in advance. Schedules are locked down. Itineraries are confirmed. Every detail is choreographed long before the president's plane ever leaves American soil. Not this time. Beijing did not officially announce Trump's visit until Monday, 2 days' notice, for the most consequential US-China summit in nearly a decade. 2 days. Think about what that means. The Chinese government, which controls every piece of information that flows to its citizens, waited until the absolute last moment to tell the world that the American president was coming. That is not normal diplomacy. That suggests the summit was contested right up until the final hours. That behind the scenes, both nations were wrestling over an agenda that could not be finalized. And we know exactly what the sticking point was. 1 day before the summit, China's top economic official, the vice premier in charge of the entire Chinese economy, suddenly rushed to South Korea. He flew there to meet urgently with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Why the emergency? Because Washington had sent Beijing a message 10 days earlier. That message demanded the summit agenda include the Iranian crisis and the Strait of Hormuz. This was exactly the topic Beijing wanted off the table. This was the topic that exposed China's strategic collapse.
Iran had just rejected an American proposal. The strait remains under American control. And Washington reportedly suspects China of routing dual-use goods to Tehran through back channels in Russia and Central Asia. So Beijing's top economic official had to fly to Seoul for an emergency meeting with Bessent. Then he had to race back to Beijing just in time for Trump's arrival, frantically trying to manage an agenda that had blown up in their faces. One Chinese insider described the dynamic perfectly. One side talks about the Strait of Hormuz. The other side talks about the Strait of Taiwan. 2 straits, 2 pressure points, 2 geopolitical ultimatums, each superpower holding the other's most vital interest hostage. But here's what matters. America has the upper hand on both straits. America controls Hormuz, and America has made clear that any move on Taiwan will trigger consequences China cannot survive. Now, let me tell you about the Temple of Heaven, because this detail reveals Xi Jinping's psychology. Xi is personally escorting Trump to the Temple of Heaven. This is an ancient imperial site where Chinese emperors performed sacred rituals to affirm the mandate of heaven, the cosmic authority to rule. This is not tourism. Xi is projecting China as a 5,000-year-old civilization. He is trying to remind Trump that China existed long before America and will exist long after. He is using historical theater to assert Chinese greatness. But what happens inside the temple is the real story. Xi and Trump are expected to hold a private meeting, one-on-one. No aides present, no cabinet officials, no diplomats, possibly only interpreters in the room. And here's the detail that reveals everything about Xi's position. Xi's own daughter, who is Harvard educated and fluent in English, is reportedly expected to serve as his personal interpreter. Stop and think about what that means. Xi Jinping, the most powerful leader in China since Mao Zedong, the man who has consolidated more authority than any Chinese leader in decades, does not trust anyone in his own diplomatic corps to translate his private words to the American president. He has to use his own daughter because he cannot trust his own people. That is not confidence, that is paranoia. That is the behavior of a leader who feels surrounded by enemies within his own government. Something is changing inside the Chinese Communist Party. Something is shifting in the power dynamics, and Xi is acting like a man who does not feel secure. Now let me explain the leverage Trump is carrying, because this is what makes this summit different from anything that has come before. For years, China was not competing with America in isolated areas. China was competing everywhere simultaneously. They were building energy dependencies around the world. They were embedding financial infrastructure across developing nations. They were acquiring port access from Africa to South America to Southeast Asia. They were constructing the Belt and Road Initiative to rival American influence globally. And most importantly, they were sustaining Iran as a strategic asset at one of the most critical choke points on Earth. In July of 2025, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi literally promised Tehran that China would continue supporting Iran against American pressure. China was Iran's financial lifeline, their technological supplier, their diplomatic protector. Then came Operation Epic Fury. Trump deployed the doctrine that has defined his foreign policy. Massive military force and economic statecraft applied simultaneously, giving adversaries no window to adapt, no time to reroute, no ability to recover. America degraded Iran's military capacity. America crushed the financial networks sustaining Tehran. And in doing so, Trump destroyed China's most important strategic asset in the Middle East. Iran is broken. And China could not save them. But the leverage extends far beyond Iran. Control of the Strait of Hormuz means control over 20% of the world's oil supply. It means control over 40 to 50% of China's oil imports. Half of China's energy flows through a choke point that America now dominates militarily. If China ever moved on Taiwan, America would not just respond with military force. America would close the strait. America would cut off half of China's oil supply. The Chinese economy would collapse within months. That is leverage no previous American president has ever possessed. That is power on a scale China has never had to confront. And China did not just lose Iran, they lost Venezuela too. When Trump sent Delta Force to capture Maduro, he eliminated China's strategic foothold in South America. Billions in Chinese investment became worthless overnight. Their presence in the Western Hemisphere collapsed. China has lost two of its most important allies because of Trump. Their proxy network has been shattered. Their global strategy is in ruins. Now let me tell you about China's internal crisis, because its context is essential. Xi Jinping is dealing with massive internal pressure that he cannot hide anymore. There has been a military leadership purge over the last several months. General after general has disappeared. There is reportedly only one senior general left in the Chinese military after all the others were removed. Why would Xi purge his entire military leadership? Because he does not trust them. Because he fears betrayal. Because he is worried about a coup. There is growing factional opposition within the Communist Party. There are questions about succession that Xi has never answered. There are signs of increasing political isolation at the very top of the Chinese system. And here's the detail that tells you everything. Xi Jinping has not left China since meeting Trump at the APEC summit in South Korea last October. He skipped the BRICS summit. BRICS, the organization China has been championing as an alternative to Western institutions. The summit that was supposed to demonstrate China's growing influence. Xi did not show up. That would have been unthinkable 1 year ago. The leader of China skipping a major international summit that China itself has been promoting. Something is keeping Xi in Beijing. Something is making him afraid to leave his own country. Whether it is fear of a coup, fear of losing control, or something else entirely, Xi is behaving like a trapped leader. And Trump is about to sit across from him and see all of it firsthand. Now let me tell you what this means for the summit. When Trump sits across from Xi at the Great Hall of the People, and later in that private room at the Temple of Heaven, he is not arriving as a supplicant requesting cooperation. Trump is arriving as a leader of a nation that just demonstrated in the Middle East that American power projection is unmatched anywhere on earth. He is arriving with an energy chokehold that China cannot escape. Half of their oil flows through a strait America controls. He is arriving with the most powerful business delegation ever assembled. 17 CEOs representing trillions in economic power, all offering China access to American markets, but only on American terms. And he is arriving with something no intelligence briefing can provide. The opportunity to sit across from Xi with no one else in the room, look him directly in the eyes, and personally assess whether the man across the table still commands the most powerful authoritarian system on earth. Trump is a master at reading people. He has spent his entire career negotiating with powerful figures, assessing their strengths and weaknesses, finding their pressure points. In that private meeting, Trump will sense everything. The desperation, the isolation, the fear. He will understand exactly how much pressure Xi is under, and exactly how far he can push. Xi has never faced anything like this. He has never negotiated with an American president who holds this many advantages. He has never been in a position of such weakness. Now let me tell you about what Trump is demanding. First, China must abandon Iran completely. No more financial support. No more technology transfers. No more dual-use goods flowing through back channels. China has to choose between their dying ally in Tehran and access to American markets. Second, trade must become fair. Real concessions on tariffs, intellectual property, and market access. No more stealing American technology. No more currency manipulation. No more predatory practices that have cost American workers millions of jobs. Third, Taiwan must be protected. Any move against Taiwan triggers devastating consequences. Military response, Economic strangulation. Complete isolation from the global financial system. Fourth, China must stop undermining American interests globally. The Belt and Road Initiative cannot continue as a vehicle for expanding Chinese influence at America's expense. China must operate within boundaries that serve American interests. These are not requests, these are demands. And Trump has the leverage to enforce every single one of them. Now let me tell you about the business dimension, because this is where China's strategy completely fails. For years, the Chinese Communist Party tried to drive wedges between American corporations and the American government. They offered sweetheart deals to individual companies. They promised market access in exchange for technology transfers. They tried to buy corporate loyalty by making executive dependent on Chinese profits. The strategy was simple. Make American CEOs advocates for Chinese interests. Use corporate greed to undermine American policy. Trump just destroyed that playbook. Those 17 CEOs on Air Force One are not there as independent actors pursuing their own interests. They're there as part of Trump's team. They're negotiating as a unified American bloc. Elon Musk wants to expand Tesla in China, but he is standing with Trump. Tim Cook wants stability for Apple supply chains, but he is standing with Trump. Every single CEO on that plane has aligned themselves with the American government. China cannot pick them off one by one anymore. They cannot offer special deals to divide American business from American policy. They have to deal with America as a unified force. And that force is demanding terms China has never had to accept. Now let me tell you about the implications for the world, because this summit reshapes everything. If Trump succeeds in extracting real concessions from China, the global balance of power shifts fundamentally. American workers benefit from fairer trade deals. American companies benefit from protected intellectual property. American security benefits from a weakened Chinese strategic position. Taiwan becomes safer because China understands the consequence of aggression. Iran becomes more isolated because their last major supporter abandons them. The Belt and Road Initiative stalls because China cannot afford to antagonize America. This is what American strength looks like when properly applied. This is what happens when a president understands leverage and is willing to use it. No previous administration achieved anything close to this. Obama tried engagement and got taken advantage of. Biden tried competition and got ignored. Only Trump has a combination of strength, leverage, and willingness to force China to the table on American terms. Now let me tell you about what happens next. Over the next 36 hours, Trump and Xi will negotiate the future of the US-China relationship. The conversations at the Great Hall of the People will cover trade, technology, and security. The private meeting at the Temple of Heaven will cover things we may never fully know. But based on everything we understand about this summit, America will come out on top. The strange signals tell the story. The late announcement shows China was scrambling. The emergency meeting in Seoul shows their agenda collapsed. The use of Xi's daughter as interpreter shows paranoia at the highest levels. Beijing needed the summit more than Washington did. And Trump knew exactly what he was walking into. He did not arrive to ask for cooperation. He arrived to dictate terms. He arrived with leverage that no president has ever possessed. He arrived at the moment of maximum Chinese weakness. History is being made in Beijing right now. The relationship between the world's two superpowers is being fundamentally reshaped. And it is being reshaped by President Donald J. Trump. No president has ever done this. Not with this kind of leverage. Not with this kind of delegation. Not a moment when the adversary is this weak. This is the art of the deal on a global scale. This is American strength properly applied. This is what putting America first really means. The world is watching Beijing. And what they are seeing is American power at its peak, wielded by a president who understands exactly how to use it. Whatever emerges from that private meeting at the Temple of Heaven, whatever words pass between Trump and Xi with only interpreters present, the outcome will favor America. Because Trump holds all the cards. Because China has no alternatives. Because this is what happens when strength meets weakness and leverage meets desperation. The future is being written in Beijing. And Donald J. Trump is holding the pen. Don't stop here. The Beijing summit represents the most significant shift in US-China relations in decades. Click on the next video and join us as we continue to cover President Trump's historic confrontation with China.